The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden hue over our cozy little house. Amber's laughter echoed through the living room as I watched her play with our 5-year-old daughter, Lily. They were sprawled across the carpet, buried under a mountain of crayons and half-finished doodles. Amber's hair glinted in the soft light, a cascade of curls that framed her face. In that moment, everything felt perfect. It felt whole. We had been married for 7 years, yet it felt like only yesterday that we exchanged vows under the sprawling oak tree in our backyard. All the promises of love and support flooded my mind with bittersweet nostalgia. I remembered how we went to college together, sharing late-night study sessions that often dissolved into warm cups of tea and laughter. I still cherish those mornings when we woke up to the smell of freshly brewed coffee. But lately, a subtle shift had crept into our lives, with whispers of discontent that I couldn't quite put my finger on. The first inkling of trouble came a few weeks ago when Amber was distracted, her gaze often drifting to the window. It wasn't that she wasn't present, she was there physically, but her mind seemed to wander to far-off places. I dismissed my concerns as exhaustion from her long work days at the hospital. Nurses often gave their all to help others, and I admired that about her. But then came the nights. Oddly late evenings when she had to stay back at work for an additional shift. I brushed it off again, thinking how dedicated she was to her patients. But with every passing late shift, my heart tightened just a little more, suspicion creeping into my thoughts like a shadow inching closer with each sunset. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One evening, I decided to make her favorite dinner, as I often did when I sensed she was stressed. I plated up chicken Alfredo and set the table, the soft glow of candles flickering while Lily played in her room. But as I lifted the phone to call her, I hesitated. Just before hello broke through the receiver, I caught myself. Why hadn't she replied to my texts? Why hadn't either of us known the number of days she'd missed dinner? On the 5th late shift, my unease turned to urgency. I wondered if her phone buzzed more often than it should, hiding messages she glanced at during chores. Her smile seemed guarded when she thought I wasn't looking. Then I found myself lingering behind the kitchen door one evening, caught between hope and dread. Got to finish this paperwork. It's important, I had heard her say quietly, the edge to her voice even more telling than her words. A little laugh followed a light-hearted response that didn't quite match her tone. I couldn't shake the feeling that the laughter wasn't meant for me. Within days, I became my own investigator, piecing together the small signs that were suddenly glaringly obvious. The neighbor, Jake, had become a frequent figure in our lives. His work on the house next door provided more than just the occasional wave over the fence. It seemed Amber was suddenly drawn to the friendship of a man who seemed so effortlessly charming while I toiled through a long work week. One Sunday, after another long shift of my own, I stepped outside to grab the morning newspaper. I turned the corner and froze. There was Amber and Jake standing close together on the porch, laughter spilling between them like sunbeams. I couldn't hear the words, but the way their bodies angled toward one another told me everything. I felt the ground shift beneath me. My heart raced as I stumbled back, a mixture of anger and disbelief swirling within me. The final proof came one evening when I found her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter. Without thinking, I scrolled through the messages, impulses driving me deeper into the pit of despair. I stumbled upon a text from Jake that sent ice through my veins. Can't wait to see you later. My breath hitched, the world around me faded into a blur. All the thoughts that had been swirling around for weeks coalesced into one horrible realization: she had betrayed me with our neighbor. The air felt thick and heavy as the weight of her disloyalty crashed into me. It was as if I were standing on the edge of a cliff, my heart teetering on the brink of an emotional plunge. That small thread of love that had once connected us snapped, leaving me feeling cold and hollow. I could feel the anger bubbling to the surface, the betrayal igniting a fire in my chest. They thought they could slide through hidden moments and innocent laughter, but it was time to end this facade. The calm before the storm was over, and the storm was on my horizon. I resolved then and there I would ruin both their lives in one night. They had taken everything from me. It was time I took something back. I stood motionless in our yard, heart pounding as the sun dipped below the horizon. The air hung heavy with the salt of tears unshed, and I knew the time had come. I could no longer waver between denial and uncovering the truth. I had to confront her, and the very thought twisted my gut in ways I had never known. As evening set in, I waited. The porch light flickered, casting an almost ethereal glow across the yard. I replayed the words in my mind, how I would approach this confrontation, how I would weave the narrative that would tear apart the web of lies Amber had spun. I knew I had to be calm, but my emotions roiled beneath the surface, threatening to explode. Amber walked through the door just before 8. She paused, caught off guard at the sight of me staring back with a steely resolve. Beneath her gentle smile lay a flicker of surprise, perhaps fear. She had no idea the darkness brewing inside me. "Dinner's almost ready," she said, her voice brightening but failing to hide the uncertainty in her eyes. I swallowed hard, my throat constricting as if the air itself had thickened in anticipation. "We need to talk, Amber." The tone in my voice transformed her face. The smile faltered, replaced with genuine concern. "Is everything all right?" "Is everything all right?" I echoed, incredulity mixing with rage. "You tell me. How's your little rendezvous with Jake going?" Her breath caught in her throat, the color draining from her face. "What do you mean?" she stammered, though we both knew there were no more lies left to tell. "Don't pretend," I said, my voice gaining an edge. I stepped closer, showing her the evidence I had gathered without invitation. I pulled out my phone, displaying the messages a record of her betrayal. Each text was a dagger, an accusation that bore witness to her duplicity. Care to explain this? The silence that followed was deafening, and in that moment Amber's composure shattered. You went through my phone." "The question isn't what I found, Amber," I said, venom dripping from each word. "It's what you've been doing behind my back. With our neighbor, no less." Stunned silence hung between us, the reality of her infidelity crashing into her in waves. The facade she had built began to crumble, and ironically I felt a sharp pang of loss for the woman I thought I knew. "Liam, please," she said, her voice trembling. "I never meant for it to happen." "Stop," I shouted, cutting through the flimsy excuses with rage honed in betrayal. "Spare me the emotional theatrics. You did this, you chose to be with him. You chose to hurt me, to hurt our family, and now it's time to face the consequences." "Don't bring Lily into this," she cried, her voice raising in panic. "She doesn't know anything." "Exactly," I lashed back, nearly choking on the weight of my fury. "And she shouldn't have to. You're the one who's going to explain to her why her family is breaking apart." Amber's face twisted, tears gathering in her dark eyes. "Liam, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. You have to believe that." "A mistake?" I scoffed, the irony fueling my anger. "What you did was a choice. A conscious choice to betray the vows we shared. Don't you dare minimize it." With that, the dam inside me broke, shattering the last of my hope that we could mend this. Her tears turned to silence, and she braced herself against the wall, as if any support could save her from this reality. "I don't think I want to be married to you anymore," I said, the truth seeping from my voice. "And if you want a divorce, fine. I'll make sure you and Jake both lose everything you hold dear." Her eyes widened, realization dawning. "What are you talking about?" "I work hard for this house. I own this property," I stated, my lips curling into a bitter smile. "It'd be a shame if it slipped through your fingers just as quickly as my love for you has. I know a thing or two about financial strife." Anger and hurt flickered across her face, raw and real. "You can't—" "Watch me," I interrupted with chilling calm. "I'll freeze all the joint accounts. I'll hire the best lawyer money can buy. I'll make sure Jake becomes collateral damage in this." I moved back, deliberately letting the distance stretch between us, relishing the shock and fear lingering in her gaze. "Liam." "No more, Amber. Every action has its consequences, and trust me, I'll ensure you pay dearly for what you've done." As I turned to leave, her arms hung limp by her sides, despair etched into every line of her face. I felt a flicker of guilt wash over me, but it was quickly suffocated by the raging tide of betrayal, revenge settling into my bones like an old friend. But I wasn't done. This was merely the beginning. I had gathered all the resources I needed to ensure that both she and Jake would find themselves trapped in a storm of repercussions. By the time I stepped into the cold night air, clarity settled around my heart like a weight I hadn't known I needed to carry. I would see their world burn, but I felt powerful for the first time in weeks. As shadows loomed in the corners of my mind, one sentence hung heavily in my heart: revenge was a dish best served cold, and I was just getting started. Now I had to raise the stakes even higher, because for betrayal this deep, punishment should cut to the quick. The late evening was thick with tension as John's phone buzzed incessantly in his pocket. Each alert was a reminder of the web he had spun overnight, and he could hardly resist the urge to check it. He couldn't help but feel a surge of triumph as images flashed through his mind: Mark's shocked face, Lisa's desperate tears, the unraveling of their perfect suburban facade. His plan had gone off without a hitch. As the clock struck midnight, John unleashed his carefully crafted messages across social media, an innocuous tribute to neighborhood friendship turned brutal expose. He had sent screenshots of Lisa and Mark's conversations to their classmates, family, and mutual friends. Every lie they had woven together spread like wildfire, consuming every semblance of trust they had built. Now the fallout was upon him. John sat in the darkness of his living room, a glass of bourbon in hand, watching the notifications pour in. Neighbors opened the group chat, incredulous at the betrayal. Comments spiraled from disbelief to outrage. The guilt that had weighed heavily on his heart had transformed into vindication. He had taken control, and what had felt like an insurmountable pain was now a sweet release. A text notification broke the silence, startling him. It was from an old friend from college, an unexpected call for help. "I'm so sorry about Lisa. Let's get together soon. I'm here for you, man," it read. For the first time in weeks, John's chest felt lighter. The support he had feared would vanish was instead pouring in. He took a deep breath, letting the warmth of gratitude wash over him. But there was still a storm brewing in the neighborhood, one that John anxiously awaited. He scanned the street from the window, knowing everyone was awake, huddling on their porches, whispering about the scandal that had rippled through their once tight-knit community. He felt a strange satisfaction watching it unfold, like a spectator in a scene he'd only ever imagined. It wasn't long before a violent knock shattered the quiet. John's heart raced as he pulled the door open to find Mark on the other side, flanked by a furious Lisa. "What the hell did you do?" Mark shouted, his face ashen, eyes wild with panic. "You know exactly what I did." John met his gaze with cold determination. "I exposed the truth. You thought you could laugh behind my back and get away with it. Can't you see this isn't just about you?" Lisa yelled, her voice trembling. "You're ruining everything. Just think of Mia." "Mia will be fine," John shot back, controlling his rage just enough to keep his voice steady. "You had a choice to make, and you chose this. You chose him. You chose to ruin our family. Don't act like I'm the one tearing it apart." "Well, you've gone too far." Mark stepped closer, fists clenched at his sides, desperation seeping from his tone. "You have no idea what'll happen now. My wife found out. Everything is falling apart because of your petty revenge." "Petty revenge?" John spat, the tension sparking in the air around them. "This is just as something you both seem to overlook in your little game of betrayal. Your reputations are crumbling. Your marriage is done, and it's all because of your choices." But it was just a fling, a mistake," Lisa gasped, her bravado faltering as her composure crumbled. "Can't we fix this?" "Fix what?" John asked, his voice low and menacing. "The trust you shattered? The lives you decided to toy with? This isn't just about the two of you anymore." Lisa recoiled slightly. Above all the other emotions woven into this moment, regret was rising to the surface, clawing to escape. There was no denying the truth that had come to light. As the sky darkened and the street fell silent, John watched the couple unfold before him, realizing the weight of despair that had dulled that once vibrant part of his life. There was no more pretending. Both Mark and Lisa were mere shadows of the people he had once admired. They stood exposed, stripped of their defenses, their fragile hearts bare to the wind. "You don't understand what you're losing," Mark murmured, his voice dropping to a whisper, as if grasping for any semblance of sympathy. "I understand everything now more than ever," John replied, walking away to give them room to digest their choices, the consequences hanging heavily in the air. He left the door ajar, a silent invitation for them to continue spiraling into their reality without him. Because at that moment he felt like he finally had control over his life again. Days passed, and life began to settle into a surprising rhythm. John focused on ensuring that Mia remained blissfully unaware of the chaos shattering her parents' lives. He opened conversations around the dinner table, asking about her day, listening intently to her innocent insights about the world around her. He rediscovered pieces of himself he thought had evaporated, exploring art with Mia, taking up hobbies he had allowed to fade, engaging with friends who rallied to support him. But within the quiet of his evenings, he could still hear the rage simmering just beneath the surface every time he glanced at the empty chair where Lisa once sat. Part of him had expected more chaos, more fallout, but instead, it felt like he had reclaimed his peace. The reminders left behind by Lisa's choices were permeating the neighborhood like a dark cloud, and he relished the idea that summer block parties would now be fraught with uncomfortable silences and sidelong glances at a family who once basked in the warmth of community. He wanted to know who had reached out to Lisa first. Who of those friends he thought fully trusted him might throw their weight behind a shunning of their own? Eventually, he felt safe enough to check in on Lisa's social media, the one life newsfeed he had purposefully shut out. What he saw an agonizing cascade of public sympathy, flowing with pity, all while Mark became a social pariah, reduced to an outcast. Whatever had once drawn them together was now a memory lost among the updates, and John let out a deep, long breath. It would take time for both Lisa and Mark to find their footing. The hurt they encountered was real, each leg of their life uprooted, filled with whispers and pointed fingers. Lives they presumed they could control collapsed, and it felt surreal watching the perfect glimmer of their world turn dull. Then came the call, just as John was tucking Mia in for bed. "Can we talk?" whispered Lisa, her voice wavering on the other end. He hesitated, glancing at Mia, whose eyes were fluttering shut. "Why?" "There's nothing left to talk about." "I need to apologize," she pleaded. "I see now. I didn't understand how attached I was to that life, to this family. I've lost everything." He drew in a breath, feeling the ruins of the life they had built together still staggering around them. The echoes of laughter, birthday parties, adventures, they were all embedded in his mind, suffocating under the weight of her infidelity. "Your actions left me no choice, Lisa," he replied steadily. "What we had is gone. I'm not sure you can blame anyone but yourself." "But Liam." "No, you're not able to unravel this now. You made your decision. You have faced the consequences of your actions, and for the first time, I'm not bound by them. I'm free." He ended the call, feeling a lingering chill that came from her facade, the masks she had worn all those years. The bitterness ebbed from his heart, leaving room for something sweeter. What is it? Hope. No longer bound by her deceptions, he was finally moving forward, reclaiming himself in a life that felt uniquely his own. The sun had risen again, illuminating the dark corners of his despair and beckoning him toward a brighter future. John could finally take a step back without resentment holding him hostage each passing day. He walked into the kitchen feeling lighter, knowing that whatever scar lay between him and Lisa would not be the lens through which his daughter viewed him. He embraced the warmth of a new day rising and knew he wouldn't just survive it, he would thrive. The chapter of betrayal had closed, giving way to a bright new narrative. John smiled as he watched Mia scamper into the living room, unburdened by the shadows that had lingered for too long. Together they would build new memories together, stronger and wholly free.